In what may be one of the biggest mistakes Twitter has ever made, they inserted their editorial opinion over tweets from Donald Trump and the White House, effectively declaring war on the president. Trump had tweeted earlier about what's going on in Minnesota and the riots. He said that the military was basically standing by, but that when the looting starts, the shooting starts. This was likely in reference to a pawn shop that was being looted, and the owner shot and killed the looter. It also is a reference to the civil rights era riots, and many people took offense to it. Well, Twitter decided this was glorifying violence. That is entirely their editorial opinion. To make it worse, Michael Moore and many others actually did glorify the violence and call for more. In this, it appears Twitter has declared war on Trump. They're not targeting other high-profile verified accounts that are glorifying what's happening and calling for more. Now, the argument on their side is, well, it's the president. The president tweeted this, so we need to flag this. We saw something happen a few days ago, which was also unprecedented. Donald Trump tweeted his opinion about mail-in voting, and Twitter injected their editorial opinion, linking people to the opinions of the Washington Post and CNN. This, to many people, was shocking, considering these news organizations donate to and endorse political actors, including Hillary Clinton and other presidential candidates. Twitter was pressing their thumb on the scale to hurt Donald Trump. It's the only way you can look at it. That's their bias. But now they're placing an editorial opinion over Trump. I'm sorry. There's no other way to look at this than Twitter is no different than the New York Times. I understand there's some arguments that could be made, right? The New York Times has a staff of journalists whose intent is to publish content. But Twitter crossed the line. They aren't a neutral platform. They are the same as the New York Times because they literally wrote an opinion and then placed it over the president's tweets. Trump didn't make that message. Therefore, you could only argue that Twitter is choosing to publish this with their opinion attached, and they would be liable. This is a disaster for social media. In response to this, Trump is tweeting revoke Section 230. This is the provision that or the policy or the law that protects social media companies like Twitter from being personally liable from the statements made by individuals on the platform. If someone tweets something that's defamatory, you can't sue Twitter. But if the New York Times posts something that's defamatory, you could sue the journalist and the New York Times. Therefore, it would seem that Twitter has crossed the line in what may be a serious mistake. I'm sorry, man. I went on the Joe Rogan podcast last year talking to Jack Dorsey, and I said this was going to happen. That it was only a matter of time before conservatives realized you were negatively impacting their chances at re-election, and they would use the full brunt of policy to come after you. And I was met with arrogance. Now, Jack Dorsey, I believe he does want to do the right thing, but he keeps saying over and over again that we're aiming for decentralization. He puts out these big tweets. Look at who we're funding. And what ends up happening? He goes in the other direction. I can't tell you why. He says he wants to do the right thing. The right thing isn't happening. Maybe we will eventually get to a proper decentralized internet, and maybe Jack really wants it to happen. But instead, all we see is Twitter using their power, controlling this platform to interfere in elections by manipulating content, by shadow banning political actors, and then placing their personal editorial opinions on top of content. And I'm going to show you the evidence as to why. The first story we have in the New York Times. Twitter places a warning on a Trump tweet, but I don't want to bury the lead here. Take a look at this. I tweeted, the official editorial opinion of Twitter is now live. Trump's tweet saying when the looting starts, the shooting starts is glorifying violence, but calling for violence that supports the riots is not. Twitter is insane to think they can run editorial for 340 million people. And there it is. Twitter safety straight up saying, we have placed a public interest notice on this tweet. Let me show you what this notice is. There's Michael Moore. Let me see. I got a bunch of tweets pulled up. In this tweet, they write, this tweet violated the Twitter rules about glorifying violence. However, Twitter has determined that it may be in the public's interest for the tweet to remain accessible. What is Twitter's official editorial opinion? That Trump saying this phrase glorifies violence. But Michael Moore, who tweeted good citizens burning down the evil police precinct in Minnesota after all the police were out and safe, that's not glorifying violence? I don't see any flag or notice on Michael Moore. And how many followers does Michael Moore have? 6.1 million. And now we can see, while many people will point out, oh, but that's the president. Sure. What about dozens of verified users? If one person tweets and you think it's bad and want to flag it, I understand. But why would you ignore the dozens of high-profile verified users with millions of followers who are endorsed via verification? Why would you ignore that? All right, let's read the New York Times story, because I needed to show you that. We'll read the New York Times story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is share this video. We are facing unprecedented social media censorship. And people right now are arguing, nobody censored the president. They just put a tag on it. That is absolutely not true. It says right here, this tweet is unavailable. If I want to see this, I need to use a Twitter extension. Otherwise, I have to go through some weird thing where there's a flag. I can't see it. I pulled up Trump's tweet. There is nothing there. That's censorship. Now, you want to argue the scale of censorship? You want to argue that I can still get the tweet by other means? No dice. Just because they throttled it so most people can't see it and some people can, doesn't mean it isn't censorship. They're directly censoring the president and the White House. We can't have this. I'm sorry. This is interference in elections. Now, of course, you can argue Twitter is a private platform. They have become too powerful. This is where people are having these discussions. It's where news is breaking. They control too much. I have always been in favor of regulation when companies start seizing the commons. Where's the left on this one? Hey, no idea. Okay, that being said, if you want to help out in the face of what is likely going to affect me on my platforms and other platforms, consider sharing the video. I can't compete with the mainstream media, and YouTube props them up while pushing me down. But your shares are more powerful, at least for the time being. Now, if you just want to watch, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the notification bell. Hopefully that's enough to keep YouTube recommending my content. But let's read the story from the New York Times. They say, Twitter places warning on Trump tweet saying it glorified violence. The president's tweet, which implied that protesters in Minneapolis could be shot. No. Stop, Twitter. Stop, New York Times. It was a quote from a police chief during the civil rights era, and you can criticize the president for saying it. But he's not talking about protesters. The word he used was looters. It literally happened. A man was charged with murder because another guy was looting his pawn shop and he shot and killed him. The New York Times says, amid the unrest in Minnesota, the president took time out to expand his feud with Twitter. This is just so awful. I can't stand the New York Times. Report the news. Stop editorializing. Accusing it of targeting conservatives and him in particular, and calling for legislation to revoke the company's legal liability protections that are foundational to its business. The official White House account then reposted the tweet that had been flagged in a move meant to defy the company. Twitter responded by adding the same notice on the White House account. I'm sorry, man. I'm just so tired of all of this. The New York Times, this is an opinion piece. In a move meant to defy. That is an opinion that is not news. That is your opinion. I could argue it was a move to trap Twitter so they could enact legislation by arguing that Twitter was censoring the White House. But in your opinion, it was meant to defy. We don't know what the intention was. You made that up. I can't stand this anymore, man. These media companies lie all day. They inject their opinions. This is not the news. The news is Trump tweeted a phrase. Twitter placed a block on that. You had to click in order to see it. The White House then retweeted the quote, and Twitter did the same thing. The news. Now, if you want to speculate beyond that, as I am doing, that's fine. That's political commentary. But the New York Times needs to drop the pretense. You are just giving us your opinion. The company said Mr. Trump's original post violated its rules against glorifying violence, and it prevented users from viewing the tweet without reading a brief notice. The first time it has restricted one of the president's messages in this way. Twitter also blocked users from liking or replying to Mr. Trump's post, though they were still allowed to retweet it if they had added a comment of their own. But Twitter did not take the tweet down, saying it was in the public's interest that the message remain accessible. Who determines whether or not it's glorifying violence? The editorial opinions of the staff at Twitter. Now, some people feel that this is direct retaliation against the president for his executive order on Section 230. He wants the FCC to clarify what Section 230 means and whether or not they could provide guidance that would result in lawsuits against Twitter. I don't think it will happen. But now here we are. Twitter's policy tweeted, "This executive order is a reactionary and politicized approach to a landmark law. Section 230 protects American innovation and freedom of expression, and it's underpinned by democratic values. Attempts to unilaterally erode it threatens the future of online speech and internet freedoms. I'll tell you what, this is your fault. It is your fault, Jack, Vijaya, and everybody at Twitter. I warned you it was going to happen, and now we are all going to be facing the brunt of this. If Section 230 is revoked, say goodbye to my YouTube channel. It will go back to the days of only getting your news from CNN and Fox News, because no company could bear the brunt of a wave of lawsuits with or without merit. Without Section 230, you will see hundreds of thousands of lawsuits pop up immediately. And whether they're real lawsuits or frivolous, it doesn't matter, because Twitter will not be able to mount a defense. It will shut down overnight. What makes sense, potentially, is the clarification of Section 230 and the actual enforcement in some capacity of companies that are violating what Section 230 is. Section 230 says that there are certain reasons why companies may be able to take things down. But is it objectionable to say learn to code? No, it's not. And sure, maybe there needs to be a court to determine what that means. Well, Trump asked for clarification. Twitter can't just be immune, censoring, like taking all of this power away and then just banning whoever they want. Here's a tweet from Michael Moore. Michael Moore says the city should demolish the police headquarters, but he referred to the people burning it down as good citizens and the evil police. Hey, man, when it comes to what's happening in Minnesota, 99% of people are on board that the police were wrong. But the rioting isn't doing anything to solve these problems. Now, if you want to argue the takeover of the police precinct, I think it's wrong, but I get it. If you want to argue the burning down of low-income housing, that makes literally no sense. Or the firefighter who lost his dream sports bar, a dream come true that he was so close to achieving, crossing that finish line, taking it away from him. If you haven't seen that story, go to youtube.com/TimCastNews. I just did it. This guy's raised a bunch of money. I'm very happy for him. But if you want to argue about rioting, fine. But this is glorifying violence, and that is not okay, in my opinion. Should people be allowed to post this stuff? I think they should be. It's free speech. I don't like it. But why did they only flag the president? The argument is, well, it's the president, right? What about his opponents? This would mean that the weight would be always placed against the incumbent, and now Twitter is using its power with 340 million users, even international users, non-American users, putting their weight on this, negatively impacting our elections. Sure, there's no regulation yet. I want it. I want it done right. I've talked about the dangers of doing things wrong. What Trump is doing is wrong. He's calling for revoking 230. Well, you know what, man? At this point, what can I say? You reap what you have sown, and your billion-dollar company and your stock may be smashed overnight by angry Republicans and Democrats looking to shut down our free speech online. And it all comes together. Look at it this way. The Democrats don't like the fact that we can go on and we can say whatever we want. I mean that. It's true. Joe Biden said revoke 230. It's fake news. It should be removed. Well, now you get a bunch of Republicans who are saying because of this and because of social media, the Democrats are getting a major benefit. We'll take our chances. And they absolutely will start talking about shutting this down. And then every YouTuber you know and love is gone overnight. Now, I don't think that would happen. That would be insane and dramatic. But we could enter a world again where there's, I think the new world may look something more like my channel might exist. I might be okay. Because I have a bigger channel, I have multiple channels, I make money, I'm professional, and I've been approved by the YouTube Partner Program, and many others have been purged. It may end up just being a new kind of Hulu or Netflix. There will be no place where a user can sign up and just start tweeting. You'll have to get vetted and approved and sign contracts and liability clauses and all that stuff. I don't know exactly what will happen, but I know this is Twitter's fault. Now let's move on to some other things. Here's the first tweet from Trump where he said, I can't stand back and watch what's happening. Here's the second tweet and the notice. He then referenced, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Here's the tweet from the White House where they say the same thing. The tweet violated the rules about glorifying violence. The president did not glorify violence. He clearly condemned it. @Jack and Twitter's biased bad faith fact checkers have made it clear Twitter is a publisher, not a platform. They're right. You could actually argue that the New York Times has Section 230 protections for their own staff. They arguably do. So is anybody, but would the New York Times win a case? They probably would not. A court would deem, no, New York Times, you chose to publish this. If Twitter is editorializing, all it takes now, in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, people can start suing. I would argue that you may actually see the end of Twitter's 230 protections. They may have lost it already. They made moves. They have editorialized this content. This statement underneath the White House is published in tandem with a statement from the White House. This is Twitter's opinion about what constitutes glorifying violence. It may be a single step over the threshold, but it may be enough. Lawsuits may now start emerging where people will say, I'm suing Twitter for defamation. Why? They defamed me with a statement of fact. It is not a statement of fact. The courts may say, well, what about Section 230? Aha, but take a look at this. They accompanied that statement on my post, meaning they posted it. Welcome to the new world, man. Twitter may have just ended everything. We may be watching the end of free speech, independent commentary and news, and it may be because Twitter wants it, to be honest. They may want this to happen. Jack Dorsey has said over and over again that he believes in decentralization and federate. There's something called the Fediverse where it functions much like the regular internet. He's talked about funding these new platforms. Let's look at this. I got a bunch of tweets pulled up. So now we can see this tweet from Ryan Kelly. Gab had been reserving an account for Donald Trump since August 2016, and they're just mirroring it, and they want Trump to sign up. They want him to take it over. Trump might do it. I mean, they're smearing Gab for sure. It's stupid. Gab is mostly a libertarian thing. But Trump may actually move, and that may be a good thing. And Twitter might want this to happen. Jack Dorsey said this in December of 2019. Twitter is funding a small independent team of up to 5 open source architects, engineers, and designers to develop an open and decentralized standard for social media. The goal is for Twitter to ultimately be a client of this standard. Twitter was so open early on that many saw its potential to be a decentralized internet standard, like SMTP, email protocol, for a variety of reasons. All reasonable at the time, we took a different path and increasingly centralized Twitter. But a lot's changed. First, we're facing entirely new challenges. We're facing entirely new challenges centralized solutions are struggling to meet. For instance, centralized enforcement of global policy to address abuse and misleading information is unlikely to scale over the long term without placing far too much burden on people. I got to stop. It sounds great. It sounds awesome. Why then go after Trump? I can only think of 2 potential reasons. The first is that advertisers on Twitter don't like the fact that they're not doing anything and the media is smearing them because the media hates Trump. The advertisers then say, we don't like the lack of enforcement. We don't want to advertise here. So they make a move against the president to appease the negative press to protect their bottom line. They want to survive. It's possible, however, Jack wants to force Twitter to collapse. It would force people to move to other platforms. Why isn't Donald Trump on Gab or Parler or Minds or any of these other platforms? I honestly have no idea. I can only imagine because he doesn't really care. But the solution is simple. It's not to revoke Section 230. I think it should be enforced. It's hard to figure out the right moves. But I think the president should just go to another platform. And then everyone will be forced to move. The press will be forced to cover it. And this could open the door for a real decentralized network like Jack is talking about. Think about it this way. There's something called the Fediverse, federated networks. Most of these are dominated by social justice activists. If Twitter was open to this protocol or whatever it is they're building, Twitter would function in this way. If I use Twitter as the main platform where I have many followers, I can follow anyone on any other network. Let's say you set up your own private server that is just you. I'll put it this way. Let's say I use timcast.com. All right, that's my website. And instead of posting to Twitter, I post to tim@timcast.com. You then on Twitter search the network, the Fediverse, not just Twitter, and you find my essentially email address and follow it. It would just be like email. It would be inverse email. Instead of sending something directly to someone, you post for everyone to be able to, when you post, everyone gets it. So users subscribe to your posts. They can get them through Twitter, and Twitter can't ban you because it would be like looking up a website. This is how the Fediverse works. And it's probably one of the smartest things I've ever seen. It would end all of these problems, all of the censorship. No one could do anything to stop the president. He could literally say anything he wants, and we all could. And you could use any one of these companies to follow any of these people. Now, it's possible Twitter would say something like, we have banned this network because it has too many bad people. So people would just move to a different network. If you created your own platform, you could follow the Twitter platform. You could follow anybody across anything. It would be just like the internet. The issue is Twitter is a microblogging site completely centralized with centralized authority, and Jack needs to give it up sooner rather than later. And there's one simple thing they can do to make that happen. Open up Twitter to be able to follow people on the Fediverse, which includes websites like Gab. You might not like them, but if you choose to follow them, that's your choice. They're not breaking the law. You don't have to like it. It doesn't matter. Jack can then ban anybody on Twitter, and all you got to do is create your own server or join a different federated server. Some networks might ban other networks, but ultimately it wouldn't matter because you can just go to the free speech network and follow whoever you want. Let's say someone creates something called Open Space or whatever. You sign up and you choose to follow me on Twitter. You get all my tweets. You can interact with them. You can retweet them within your network. And then I stay on Twitter like normal. Jack can't ban you because you're not on his network. Technically, this could all exist right now because you can repost tweets to other websites. You could theoretically make a website that just browses Twitter and shares it. But Twitter, I don't know if they have the API open so that people can actually do that. I can't tell you why they're doing what they're doing, but I can say it's getting scary, especially with, directly censoring and shutting down the White House and promoting people like, Michael Moore. This is a tweet posted by a woman named Olivia Gatwood, verified Twitter user. She said to burn it down. Six Hexenhammer, YouTube commentator, said, Twitter approved. That's the problem with Twitter taking an editorial position. They have 340 million active users, and there's nothing they can do to fact check everybody. If they're only fact checking Trump, then it's clearly an issue of personal bias, and it's clearly an unintentional endorsement. So what do? Twitter needs to drop it all. They need to get to the decentralized system they're talking about building. Jack says he's doing it. We'll see. He says recently we came across M. Masnick's article, Protocols Not Platforms, which captures the numbers of the challenges and solutions. But more importantly, it is a reminder. It reminded us of a credible path forward. Hire folks to develop a standard in the open. Then why are you going in the other direction? Why won't Donald Trump just leave? These are stupid questions, and it's a stupid problem. The president just needs to get off the platform, and it would change everything. For now, we are facing an election cycle where Jack is using his weight to negatively impact Donald Trump's chances to win. That's just the way it is. And the press is doing it. Jack recently put a fact check on Trump's opinion, which was a huge mistake. And I believe he's admitted it, saying, oops, we shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't be able to do it. And you shouldn't have done it. Why do you keep doing it? I don't know, man. They just keep doing it. I'll tell you what, Jack. I see you saying all these things. I had a conversation with him last year. He talked about a bunch of really awesome stuff that hippies have been hoping for a long time. Decentralization, libertarian ideals on these social media platforms, taking away the power so it can't be centralized. Just do it already. Open up Twitter to the federated network is a good start. I can go in the search bar and I can type in Bill at gab.com and boop, it pops right up. How about that? And then people will complain and say, Jack, you need to, ban this network. And then someone will make a new network and you can follow whoever you want. You can do it. And I assume you can do it fast. But for the time being, this is where we're at. Michael Moore can glorify violence, but Trump can't. Because Twitter has made their editorial opinion clear. It's personal against Trump. Doesn't matter if he's the president. Michael Moore's got 6 million followers. What about the other verified users? It really does seem like it's a combination of personal bias and laziness. We'll see how things play out. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel, and I'll see you all then.